I'm Ben. So if you joined me last time, I shared with you two stories from an immigrant community who came to New York and called New York home. Today I'm going to be sharing with you two more stories that come not from an immigrant community who came to New York, but rather from a community who have lived in New York since before New York State even existed. Because before there was a New York State, there were of course many people who were living throughout this area. I'm currently in Albany, New York, and where I am here in Albany, New York, this was ancestral land for Mohican and also for Mohawk Haudenosaunee people. So the two stories that I'm going to be sharing with you today, they come to us from the Haudenosaunee community. And now I want to note here that I myself am not Haudenosaunee, and I want to note that because storytelling and oral literature, spoken literature, is very important to many different people of many different cultures, including the Haudenosaunee. So these aren't really my stories, they're Haudenosaunee stories. Here at the New York State Museum, we like to learn about people, we like to learn about the cultures that come together to create the fabric of what New York State is today, including the Haudenosaunee. So think of my telling of these stories as being like a taste or an introduction to Haudenosaunee stories and to the Haudenosaunee community. Now, some people might be familiar with the Haudenosaunee already and not realize it, because sometimes we refer to the Haudenosaunee under a different name. So sometimes people speak of the Haudenosaunee as the Iroquois or the Iroquois Confederacy. The word Haudenosaunee is the preferred term, so that's the term that I'm going to be using. Now, the Haudenosaunee, they are a native nation to the area that is now New York State. But they're actually a coming together of different nations. They are a confederacy, a coming together of different nations to form one greater nation. Originally, the Haudenosaunee consisted of 5 member nations coming together. These member nations stretched across what is now New York State. So starting here where I am in Albany, we have Mohawk, and continuing westward, we have Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, and far in the west, over where around Rochester is, we have Seneca. Later on in the 1700s, a 6th nation was adopted into the Haudenosaunee, the Tuscarora. So sometimes today we refer to the Haudenosaunee as the 6 nations. Now, I'm currently standing in a longhouse, our recreated longhouse here at the New York State Museum. You can see behind me we have a winter storytelling scene, so this is a great place to be telling stories. And the longhouse, it is a long building with individual sections for different families. So one whole extended family can all live together in one longhouse. And the longhouse then is important both as a traditional dwelling for Haudenosaunee people, but also as a symbol for Haudenosaunee people. Because the longhouse sort of represents what the Haudenosaunee, their nation, is collectively. One longhouse stretching across New York State, or one longhouse stretching across all of these individual member nations. The word Haudenosaunee itself can be translated as people of the longhouse or people who build the longhouse. Now, the stories that I'm going to be sharing with you today, they come to me from a collection made by a woman named Mabel Powers. Mabel Powers, she was born in the late 1800s. She began to be affiliated with the Haudenosaunee and tell some Haudenosaunee stories. She was later adopted into the Seneca Nation, where she received a new name, Yesen-no-Ways, which means the one who carries and tells the stories. So she forms the main basis for the stories that I'm going to be telling you right now. So both of these stories, they take place a long, long time ago. They take place long, long ago, right around the time that all things were first created. Way back before there were buildings like the New York State Museum. Back before there were longhouses like the one I'm standing in right now. No, these stories take place way back, right around the time all things were first created, when the world was covered with lush green forests. And in those forests there were people and there were animals. And way back then, those people and those animals, they were still trying to figure out who they were. They were trying to figure out what they were going to be in this new world. And around this time, there was a boy. And this boy, he decided that what he was going to be was a great hunter. But it turns out that Being a hunter is actually very hard. This boy, he tried. He would go out into the forest every single day trying to be a great hunter. But he didn't know what he was doing. He didn't know where to find the animals in the forest. He would just wander through the forest hoping that he might bump into an animal. Sometimes he did. Sometimes he did bump into an animal. Like he would see the deer right over there. And when he saw the deer, he would cry out, "Aha, deer! I see you. Now I'm going to hunt you." And well, when the deer heard that, the deer would run away. And when the deer ran away, the boy, he didn't know how to find the deer again. The boy, he did not know how to track the animals. Yes, this boy would go off into the forest every single day, and many nights this boy would return home empty-handed, and his stomach would be empty as well. Well, one day this boy was walking through the forest, and he came across a clearing. In this clearing, he heard, "Ruff, ruff, 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 ruff." He looked into the clearing, and he saw in this clearing there were 3 dogs. There was a yellow dog, there was a brown dog, and there was a black dog. And these dogs, they were running around this clearing, and they were playing with each other. The boy watched the dogs. And after the dogs finished playing, these 3 dogs began to hunt together. The boy realized these 3 dogs were great hunters. So the boy approached the dogs, and he said to the dogs, "Excuse me, dogs, but could you teach me to be a great hunter like the 3 of you?" Well, the dogs, they looked up at the boy, and the dog said to the boy, "Yes, boy, we would be happy to teach you to be a great hunter like the 3 of us." So the boy hunted with the dogs that day, and the dogs, they showed the boy everything he needed to know to be a great hunter. The yellow dog taught the boy where in the forest you can find the animals, like over by the sweet berry bush or near where the stream is. The brown dog taught the boy everything he needed to know about sneaking up on the animals, because you have to be very quiet when you're hunting. He explained to the boy that it probably was not the best idea to cry out, "Aha, deer, I see you," every time you saw the deer. But even if you know where to find the animals, even if you're very quiet, sometimes the animals will still run away. So the black dog taught the boy everything he needed to know about tracking the animals. Well, the boy working with those 3 dogs, he caught more than he had ever caught in his entire life. As the sun was setting, the boy left the forest, and his arms were filled with so much food. He built a fire, and he roasted that meat over the fire. He shared the roast meat with the 3 dogs, and the dogs really liked the roast meat. They had never had roast meat before. They had seconds, they had thirds, they had fourths. And as the stars came out that night, the 3 dogs and the boy collapsed together in a big, warm, furry pile. The boy, he smiled, and he said, "Dogs, I really liked hunting with you today. I want to hunt with you every day." The dogs, they wagged their tails, and they said, "We would like that too, boy." The boy said, "Dogs, I want to be your friend forever." The dogs, they wagged even more. They licked the boy, and they said, "We would like that too, boy." The boy said, "Dogs, I do not want to be a boy. No, I want to be a dog like the 3 of you." Well, when the boy said this, the dogs, they didn't wag their tails. They didn't lick the boy. Instead, they looked confused. And the yellow dog looked up at the boy, and the yellow dog said to the boy, "But boy, you do not have to be a dog to be our friend, to hunt with us, to play with us." And the boy said, I know. But if I'm going to do all of those things, I might as well be a dog." The brown dog said to the boy, "But boy, if you are a dog, you will have to live by the laws of the dogs, and we do not know if you would like to live by the laws of the dogs." Well, the boy, he shrugged this off. He said, "It can't be that hard to live by the laws of the dogs. I'm sure I can do it. I want to be a dog." The black dog said to the boy, "Sleep now, boy. Tomorrow we can tell you the laws of the dogs, and then you can decide if you would like to be a dog." Well, tomorrow came, and the boy was insistent. He said to the dogs, "I still want to be a dog. Tell me the laws of the dogs, and I will live by them." So the yellow dog sat down in front of the boy, and the yellow dog said to the boy, "The first law of being a dog is that you have to wag your tail, like all the time." Well, the boy, he looked around, but he didn't have a tail. Well, he shook himself all over anyway, and the yellow dog seemed to think that was fine. He wagged his tail right back, and he said, "That was very good, boy." The brown dog came and sat in front of the boy, and the brown dog said to the boy, "The second law of being a dog is that when you see your friends, you have to lick them." Well, the boy, he looked at the brown dog, and the brown dog was his friend. But the brown dog was also a very dirty dog. The boy, he didn't know if he wanted to lick the brown dog. But he knew that he wanted to be a dog. He knew that he had to live by the laws of the dogs. So the boy, he leaned down and he licked the brown dog, and the brown dog licked him right back and said, "That was very good, boy." Now the black dog sat down in front of the boy, and the black dog said to the boy, "But boy, the third law of being a dog is that if you see someone who is a stranger, if you see someone who is not your friend, you have to fight the stranger to find out who is the better dog." Well, the boy, he wasn't sure about this law, because when we see strangers, we don't fight one another to find out who is the better of the two of us. No, we say hi, we introduce ourselves, we shake hands. We don't fight one another. But the boy knew that he wanted to be a dog. He knew he had to live by the laws of the dogs. So he looked at the black dog and he said, "This too, I will do." Well, the boy and the dogs, they spent the rest of the day together. And around mid-afternoon, the boy and the dogs, they saw a figure coming through the forest. And as the figure came closer, they saw that it was a figure of a man. A great, big, burly man, a mountain of a man. His legs were tree trunks, his muscles were boulders. And he was a stranger. The black dog looked up at the boy, and the black dog said to the boy, "Boy, he is a stranger. You have to fight him to find out who is the better dog." I can't fight him," said the boy. But the black dog said, "Boy, it is one of the laws of the dogs." Okay, I can do this. And the boy, he ran at this great big mountain of a man as fast as he could. And this great big mountain of a man, he saw this little boy running toward him. And this great big mountain of a man, he said, "Hello, boy! Are you coming to introduce yourself? Do you want to shake my hand?" But the boy, he didn't shake that man's hand. He didn't introduce himself. Instead, he jumped at the man. He landed on that man's arm. He started punching. He started biting. He started kicking. And that great big mountain of a man, he picked his arm back up with this little boy dangling from it, punching, biting, and kicking. And he thought, this boy is very rude. So this great big mountain of a man, he shook his arm. He shook his arm. He shook his arm. And this boy, he came flying off of that man's arm. He went flying through the air until he landed on the ground with a loud thunk. That great big mountain of man, he shook his head and kept on walking through the forest. Well, the dogs, they ran over to the boy. They ran over to their friend. They started licking him. They started nuzzling him. And this boy, he came to and he looked at the three dogs. He said to the three dogs, "Dogs, I don't think that I want to fight strangers anytime I meet them. I would much prefer to say hi, to introduce myself, to shake hands, to hugs. I don't want to fight strangers. I don't want to live by the laws of the dogs." Well, when the dogs heard this, they looked a little bit sad. And the dogs explained to the boy that if he was not going to live by the laws of the dogs, well, they wouldn't be able to speak with him anymore. And when the boy heard this, he was sad too. But then the boy was thinking, and he thought, well, dogs, would I still be able to hunt with you, to play with you, to be your friend forever? The dogs, they wagged their tails and they said, "Of course, boy." The boy nodded his head and the boy said, "Then dogs, I promise, I will be your friend forever. I will do everything with you. I will hunt with you. I will work with you. I will play with you. And dogs, I promise that all of the roast meat that we catch, any food that I have, I will always share some of it with you." And when the dogs heard this, they wagged their tails even more. They licked the boy and they said, "We would like that too, boy." And that is why until today, people and dogs, we are the best of friends. We do everything together. We work together, we play together. And that's also why every time we sit down at our dinner table to eat our food, our dogs are always quick to remind us that long ago, we always promised to share our food with them. The end. So I have another story that I'd like to share with you now. And this story, it also takes place a long time ago. Way back around the time that all things were first created. Because way back around the time that all things were first created, one animal, Fox, decided that he was going to be tricky. He was going to get everything he wanted by outsmarting the other animals. Now, one cool, crisp winter day, Fox was walking through the forest and he smelled something that smelled delicious. Fox followed that smell through the forest until he came to a man's camp, and he saw that this man was roasting a fish over a fire. Well, when this man's back was turned, Fox, he ran forward. He grabbed the fish in his mouth and he darted back into the forest with his prize. Well, that man's dogs, they saw what Fox had done and they started growling. They started barking and they started to run after Fox through the forest. But Fox, he was faster than those dogs. Fox, he was smarter than those dogs. And Fox, he got away. Fox laughed to himself as he ran through the forest with that fish in his mouth. He climbed up a tall tree and he sat on the top of that tall tree munching on his prize. It tasted all that much better because Fox knew he had gotten that fish by outsmarting that man. And now as Fox sat in that tall tree munching on his fish, he saw a long and beautiful tail connected to a big and burly animal a little ways away from his tree. Fox knew who that tail belonged to. He knew that that tail belonged to Bear. Because you see, way back around the time that all things were first created, Bear had a long and beautiful tail. Longer and more beautiful than the tail of any other animal in the entire forest. Well, Fox, he decided that he was going to play a trick on Bear that day. So Fox, he started munching a whole lot louder on that roast fish. He started waving that roast fish around, letting its scent waft through the forest. Now Bear, he smelled that roast fish, and it smelled good. His stomach started rumbling, and Bear followed that smell to the tree that Fox was in. Bear looked up at Fox, and Bear said to Fox, "Oh, Fox, what do you have there that smells so good?" Fox looked down at Bear, and Fox said to Bear, "Oh, this? Well, this is just a very special fish." Bear said to Fox, "Fox, I would like a very special fish too. It smells so good. Where can I get a very special fish?" And Fox, he smiled. He smiled and he said to Bear, "Oh, Bear, where did I get this fish? I'll tell you, Bear. You see that lake nearby? I swam out into the middle of that lake. There's a log floating in the middle of the lake. I climbed onto that log and I plopped my tail in the water. And then I waited, and I waited some more, and a fish bit my tail. I pulled my tail out of the water, and that bear, I swear, that is how I caught this very special fish that smells so good. Bear, with your long tail, your long and beautiful tail, I am sure that you could catch yourself a very special fish too. Bear, he nodded his head. It all made sense. Bear said, "Thank you, Fox. Thank you so much. That's what I will do." And Bear, he lumbered away down to the nearby lake. He swam out into the middle of that lake, to the log that was floating right in the middle of it. And he clambered on to that log, and it was difficult because that log, it was not very big, but Bear, he was very big. Eventually, Bear got his balance, and he plopped his tail into the water and waited. And waited. And waited. No fish were biting. Well, the day grew long, the sun was beginning to set, and Bear, he was tired. Before he knew it, Bear fell asleep. Well, that day it had been a cool winter day, but that night was an even colder winter night. The north wind blew and gusted. Ice crystals began to form on the surface of that lake. And before long, that entire lake was frozen under a sheet of ice. Now, when the sun rose on a new morning, it gleamed off of the fresh ice covering the lake. Bear, he woke up and he was cold. He was hungry. He hadn't caught a fish yesterday. Well, Bear decided that he would go somewhere else in the forest. He would forage for food elsewhere. And Bear, he tried. He tried to go somewhere else, but he found that he couldn't move. Was someone holding him? Who could hold a bear his size? But he realized his tail was stuck, frozen to the ice. He started straining, he started struggling, but no matter what he did, he couldn't get himself out of the ice. Well, at that moment, Fox, he was walking along the edge of the lake by the forest, and he saw a bear straining and struggling in the middle of that lake, and Fox, he started laughing. He started laughing, and he cried out to Bear. He said to Bear, "Oh, Bear! Oh, Bear, how's the fishing going, Bear? Have you caught anything, Bear? It looks like something may have caught you, Bear." Fox started laughing louder and louder. He laughed so loud that you could hear his laughter throughout the entire forest. And those dogs, the dogs who had been chasing Fox through the forest, well, they heard Fox's laughter. They started growling, they started barking, and they started running through the forest toward where Fox stood at the edge of that lake. Now Fox, he heard those dogs behind him, and he started to run away, running across the lake toward Bear. Bear saw Fox running toward him. He saw the dogs running behind Fox, and Bear cried out to Fox, "Fox, be careful! Don't run toward me! I won't be able to move out of the way!" Well, Fox, he smiled. He smiled and he said, "Oh, what's that, Bear? I'm afraid I didn't hear you. Allow me to run closer to you." And Fox ran directly toward Bear. Fox jumped over Bear's head. And now those dogs were running right toward Bear. The dogs cried out, "Get out of the way! Get out of the way! We're chasing the fox!" But Bear, he couldn't get out of the way. He strained more and more. He pulled himself with all of his might. And he heard a pop. He was free! But it was too late. Those dogs came boom, crashing into Bear. Bear roared. The dogs barked and growled, and in the confusion, Fox got away. Well, those dogs, they were very angry at being tricked by Fox. So they kept on searching that forest for Fox. And that's why, until today, dogs continue to hunt and search for foxes. Now, as for Bear, after those dogs ran away, well, Bear felt a little different. He felt a little lighter. And Bear looked behind him and he saw that his long and beautiful tail, it was still stuck in the lake. All Bear had left was a tiny stubby tail. And that is why until today, bears have tiny stubby tails. The end. So thank you everyone for joining me for this program here at the New York State Museum. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that you learned a little bit about Haudenosaunee people, about one community that forms a part of what New York State is today. Now currently the New York State Museum is not open, but later on, whenever the New York State Museum is open again, when this area, this longhouse here is open, you can actually hear some more stories told on a recording as part of this scene that you see behind me. And those stories are collected from collections made by Mabel Powers, by Jeremiah Curtin, and J.N.B. Hewitt of the Tuscarora, and also Jesse Cornplanter of the Seneca. And the recording itself is a performance by Delia Cook of the Mohawk. So thank you again, everyone, for joining me. I hope that you tune in for other programs that we have here at the New York State Museum, and I'll see you later.